Welcome to another episode of Live with Laura. I'm your host, Laura Hediger. And friends, we have made it to one of the biggest celebration weeks in our country's history. At the end of this week, it will be the 4th of July, a day so many Americans will come together and truly celebrate our freedom and everything that's happened in our amazing country over the last 250 years. While we'll be thinking about 1776, I also want to go back for a moment and talk about 1979. Full transparency, I wasn't alive that year, but I've heard about what happened with the Iranian hostage crisis, and I know many of you have too. So today's episode is not only going to be a history lesson, it's also going to be a conversation about resilience, about faith, about gratitude, and maybe most importantly, about freedom. And someone who is going to lead that conversation is our guest. A true honor to be talking to a true American hero, Franklin County's own Rocky Sickman. Rocky, it's good to see you.
You also, Laura. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Rocky is joining us from his home office right now in St. Charles County. And as we get this conversation going, Rocky, I want to ask, what does freedom mean to you?
Laura, the day of November 4th, 1979, that was about 47 years ago, I was enjoying that freedom when all of a sudden myself and 51 other Americans were stripped our freedom, our dignity, and our pride, known as the Iran hostage crisis. And that morning, I can remember going to the American embassy and seeing that American flag. By 4 hours later, that flag was being burnt. And so that is when myself and the other 51 spent the next 444 days not knowing if we were going to live or die. And so it is one of those things that every morning I wake up, I earn each day in memory of 8 individuals. They sacrificed their life for my life in an attempted rescue operation. So freedom, I try to tell my children, my grandchildren, how wonderful our country is. And I've been blessed to have a second chance in life. And here I am spending it with you on the show.
And it's amazing as you still have the memory of 47 years ago, that morning before not only everything in your life changed, but truly before the entire world changed. If you will, take me back even more to that November day. You were in Iran because you decided to give so much to your country. You enlisted into the Marines. What led you to that decision? And then when did you find out you were going to be sent to Iran? And what was your position in the Marines at that time?
Yes, I grew up in a small town, Laura, Krakow, Missouri. Small population. Back then, I always said it was a population of 50, and that's dogs and cats included. And my mother and father taught us many things, but they instilled 3 things: love of family, love of faith, and love of country. And I had 2 older sisters, an older brother, and a younger brother. And, my parents, whenever it was a July 4th, we were raising a flag, we were in parades. They instilled that American pride and spirit. My father was in the Army. My brother Gene was in the Army. And so I just felt that want to serve and also see the world. It was right after the Vietnam War. And so I joined in 1976. I'd gone to Asia for a year, went to Europe for a year, came back, and I wanted to be a Marine security guard, which was a very elite duty. There's about 200 American embassies around the world, and they are provided protection by the United States Marines. That's inside the property. Obviously, I graduated in September of 1979. I did not know where I was going to go until probably about 5 days after my graduation, and I was sent to Tehran. And it was interesting, Laura, that 1979, in January, the Shah of Iran had been there. He was the current dictator of Iran. He fled for his life in January of 1979. The Islamic Republic of Iran formed their government in April of 1979. That's when Ayatollah Khomeini came out of exile. The United States had 29,000 Americans in country as of January of 1979. When I got there, there were 66 Americans. And so, as Marine security guards, there were about 13 of us, and obviously, we provided protection and documents, personnel, and property of the American government. The outside perimeter was provided by the host government, the Islamic Republic of Iran. That morning of November 4th, Laura, I had just finished my job at around 7 o'clock, went up and got my civilian clothes on, came down, had breakfast, and I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Argo.
Mm-hmm.
It's the rescue operation of 6 individuals. I just so happened to have breakfast with 3 of these individuals. We're having breakfast talking about how the Marine Corps birthday was coming up on November 10th. And so we were so excited to celebrate the Marine Corps birthday and everything. And they left and went to the Visa building, which was on the back side of the 23-acre compound. I walked down to the Chancery, went into the Chancery. Billy Gallegos was the Marine on duty. He had taken over my spot. I was walking into the motor pool gate that morning, November 4th. And there's 2 things, Laura, that I will never forget, and I will tell every American until I pass away. That morning, November 4th, 1979, I'm walking into the motor pool gate. All of a sudden, my walkie-talkie had recall, recall. I looked back at the front gate of the American Embassy and the main gate where everybody comes through, and we were supposed to have security. I turned and looked, and they were coming over the wall. There was no security whatsoever. I knew then that we were in deep trouble. I ran back to the Chancery, which is the most secured, one of the most secured. The other secured building was the Visa building on the back side of the 23-acre compound. Billy Gallegos was starting to close the door of the steel door of the embassy, the Chancery. He saw me being chased, kept it open long enough for me to squeeze in, and we then secured the embassy. By the time we secured it, they were already pounding on the
Mm-hmm.
door. So if you did not make it in to the Chancery, Laura, you were immediately taken by the swarm of people that were, basically coming all over the compound.
Mm-hmm.
So there were about 30 of us that were inside the Chancery. The Marines, we donned our weapons, snubbed those 38s, sawed-off shotguns, and our job is to basically, wait for the host government, the Islamic Republic of Iran. We, my position was the front door. I'm sitting there, Laura, and I can tell you that my adrenaline was pumping. I was a 22-year-old kid,
Mm-hmm.
10,000 miles away from home. And, the day prior, there were about a quarter of a million of Iranians in front of the American embassy chanting death to America. And now here it is, November 4th. They're now on the compound and they're chanting death to America. The Americans that tried to make it to the Chancery that could not make it in, because once you closed that door, you couldn't open it. They were immediately taken. You could see them being blindfolded. Their arms were tied to the back of their back, and here we were still enjoying that freedom of what that American flag represents. But you could see our American flag being burnt. So all of a sudden, in the basement, Billy Gallegos, he radios and says they've gotten through. So the second thing I will never forget is I run downstairs. Billy's downstairs, got his gas mask on because at that point in time, Laura, if there was inside individuals, we knew that there was going to be tear gas that we were going to have to pop. So we get downstairs. Billy points down the corridor, and the second thing I will never forget that morning as they push 4 Iranian women in black chadors. The Iranian men are behind them, pushing them forward, knowing that the Marines would not shoot unarmed innocent women. And also, sat there and you wondered after we were eventually taken, you wondered if they really wanted us to shoot these individuals that would be then paraded, showing that the Marines were shooting unarmed innocent women. But I will never forget the security not being there and them, the Iranian men pushing women forward. We popped tear gas. They flee the building. We then go to the very top of the chancery, which is the most secured part of the embassy. At that point in time, State Department's on the line with President Carter back in the States. They are informing him that they are holding now Americans outside the 4-inch steel door because now they're at the top floor on the other side of the 4-inch steel door. I'm still enjoying my freedom of what it represents. And there are people that you had just had breakfast with on the other side that were begging for their life because they're holding them. And now they have weapons to their head. So President Carter said, give ourselves up. We will get this resolved with diplomacy. It would be 18 hours before any help would ever get to us. So many things have changed since then, Laura. Now they have task force, they have reactionary Marines that are on guard whenever something of this happens.
Mm-hmm.
Back in 1979, there was none. So at that point in time, the Marines, were told to unbarricade everything from the door that we had just barricaded. We then opened the doors. The Marines were the first ones out. They immediately took us, tied our arms behind our back, blindfolded us. I didn't have glasses and didn't have hearing aids then. And so they take us downstairs, and that is the day that, like I said, we were stripped our freedom, our dignity, and our pride. And I'll never forget that morning, Laura, that it was misty now. And I can remember my cloth that they had blindfolded me with. You could see images of people coming up to us with weapons and knives, and they were holding them up to our head and taking pictures as we were sitting there. Um, you could not believe that the Islamic Republic of Iran was allowing this to happen. So that was the start of that first of 444 days.
The way you're painting this picture, I almost feel like I'm watching a movie play out with your description still 47 years later. You now find yourself in captivity. You have no idea when you will be rescued, when you will get back to enjoying your freedom, if you ever will. And yet you're
Yeah.
22 years old. And I know through reading about you, your heart is not in Iran. It's back here in Missouri thinking about your family. When did they find out what was happening to you?
You know, Laura, it was to my understanding, if I remember correctly, because I was in civilian clothes, I was getting ready to go out. The other Marines, they were in uniform, and so they were taking pictures. But my family, I think it was for like a month, they didn't know if I was still taken hostage because that was one thing that they didn't give a description of who was taken hostage. It wasn't until I think 30 days later that they saw a picture of me being held hostage. But yeah, you were sitting there that first, like I said, that first day started, and they put us into a chair, and for the next 30 plus days, we sat tied to a chair, Laura. Our arms were tied to the arms of the chair. Our feet were tied to the feet of the chair. You did not speak unless they took you for interrogation. At night, they would put you on the floor and tie your wrists to your ankles, and that's how you slept. And then you woke up the next day for the next, like I said, 30 to 40 days. You sat there, and they would put you in a corner of a room. And the most discouraging thing, Laura, was sitting there through the broken windows. You could hear the city go on without you. And you're sitting there thinking it's 1979. The Vietnam War ended in 1975. When the Vietnam veterans came home, nobody cared about them. They were spit on. And you're sitting now 10,000 miles away from home, and you're thinking if nobody cared about those thousands of people, who cares about 66 Americans in an American embassy? Yeah, you knew that your family was, thinking about you, but the world was going on without you, and you could hear the traffic out there. So that would be day one, day five, day 20, day 30, day 40. And it wasn't until January that they eventually put us into a room and locked us in a room for the next 400 days.
We are speaking live with Rocky Sickman, a true American hero, where at just 22 years old, you heard he faced a future that he did not know he would ever get to see as he is stuck there in Iran. And Rocky, as this conversation evolves, I definitely want to pick your brain because I think just over the last year, so many of us have learned so much more about Iran with what's been playing out there. What an honor to speak with someone who has sacrificed so much for us, especially with the timeline as we approach the 4th of July. We're going to take a quick break. As we do that, I really encourage you to think about your own freedom and what it looks like as you hear Rocky describe the way he sat in a chair for 30 days, the way he was forced to sleep, and eventually how no one forgot about him. America did not forget about him. We were able to come and get him without other American sacrifices that definitely happened too. We'll get into that story as we come back with more of Live with Laura. It is truly an honor to have a privilege of the gift of time with the guest that we are speaking with today, Rocky Sickman, who grew up in Franklin County, Missouri. And at just the age of 22 years old, he was securing the American embassy in Iran back in 1979. And as we pick up this conversation, Rocky, you were captive for 444 days. What is it that kept you going those 444 days?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, Laura, my parents taught us many things, but instilled three things: love of family, love of faith, and love of country. And I can tell you those first 30, 40 days, as I sat tied to the chair, I had to go to a happy place. And the happy place was growing up in a small town of Krakow, Missouri, and then going to high school in Washington, Missouri. And we went to state football. I was an underclassman, got to participate in that game. I relived that football state championship game, every baseball game. Basketball, I wasn't too good. I sat on the bench a lot, but it was just growing up and remembering all the wonderful things. And of course, that first 30, 40 days was Thanksgiving. So as I sat in that chair, I could sit there and I can only think back of how wonderful. You know, my father was a concrete mixer driver. My mother was a carpet store secretary. But every holiday, they made it look like it was a Ritz-Carlton. Had food. My mother would make the turkey. She'd stuff the bird. She made the caramel rolls. My dad would build a little bar downstairs for all of our relatives that would come over. And it was just the family time and eating and enjoying. And here I sat there that Thanksgiving, that first of two. There was two Thanksgivings, two Christmases, two New Year's Eves that you didn't know if you were ever going to go back and enjoy that freedom of what that American flag represents. So that kept me alive, those first, yeah, just remembering back. And of course, Jill, she was a girl. Being a Marine security guard, you were not allowed to be married. So I had to sign a document stating I could not be married for 3 years, but she had came to my graduation and she was going to school and dancing. And so we were going to meet up in November of 1979, go skiing in Germany. Obviously, that never happened. And so she was my icon. Just like if your viewers have ever seen the movie Castaway, Tom Hanks had a locket. I didn't have a locket. I had her picture. And that first 30 days, you just didn't feel like eating. How do you feel like eating when they have a gun pointed at you and you don't know if you're going to live or die? Not only then, but for the whole 444 days. But you knew after those 30 days, you had to survive. So you had to start eating. Once we were put into a room, we were then able to start moving. We're in that room. We went outside 7 times out of 444 days, but in that room, which I'm in a room about 20 by 15. There was myself and Jerry Plotkin, the only American civilian, and Billy Gallegos. And I can tell you that in that room, just to keep ourselves somewhat fit, but also to remove the hatred. And because you wanted to hurt them so bad, we were doing 600 sit-ups and 300 push-ups a day. I can tell you when I was doing the sit-ups, my back tailbone was bleeding from just doing so many because you were trying to release the frustration and the hatred. To go to the restroom, you had to knock on a door, put a piece of paper underneath the door. They would come, they would open the door, blindfold you, handcuff you, tie you, and then take you to the restroom, which you knew where the restroom was, but you were not allowed to leave that room for 400 days. And so they had complete control of you. So, for food, they had the Ali the cook. So we gave all their names were Ali. So we gave everybody names. Ali the cook was the guy that would push the cart down. He would come into our door. We had a plate and three plates and three spoons. He would stop in front of our door. He would open the door, reach down, grab our plates, take the plates out, close the door, lock the door, put the food on the three plates, unlock the door, open the door, put the plates on the floor, close the door, lock the door, and move to the next room. And we were all being held in the offices of the American Chancery. They had removed everything, and that's where we sat until April 25th, 1980, when we had no idea that the United States would ever attempt a rescue operation. And it was that evening of April 24th, they started the rescue operation, and it finally arrived at LZ-1, which I believe was about 50 miles away from Tehran. So two C-130s, and there were supposed to be eight CH-53 helicopters. Six of them made it to the LZ. They needed six helicopters to execute the mission. The sixth one landed and had hydraulic issues, lit up like a Christmas tree. Uh, Colonel Beckwith, he was on the ground, the commander. He calls President Carter, tells him that we've got five helicopters. President Carter said he mentioned that we needed six, and Colonel Beckwith said yes, sir, but we feel like we can do it with five. President Carter, at that time, 2 o'clock in the morning of April 25th, he aborts the rescue operation. We as hostages had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
As they were refueling the last helicopter to abort the mission, the helicopter gets up to join the other ones. And again, this is 1970, 1980, Laura. It's the first utilization of night vision goggles. That's why they did not have refueling in midair. They had to refuel on the ground. The last helicopter gets up, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. The pilot loses his marker, which was a person on the ground. The helicopter becomes vertical. The pilots don't know what's up, down, sideways. They clip the wing of the C-130 and it falls onto the nose of the C-130, creating a huge ball of flames. Eight individuals burnt that morning of April 25th. It wasn't until the evening of April 25th that throughout the day, when we were locked in the room, you can I can remember people running up and down the corridor of the chancery, and in the back of the embassy, you could remember hearing traffic moving radically. And it wasn't until that night at 8 o'clock at night they come running into our room, and we always said if that door opens very quickly, get ready to move because they're going to come in and start shooting.
Mm-hmm.
So that night at 8 o'clock, the door comes open and they come running in, and you're like getting ready to fight, not knowing what's happening. They grab us. I'm handcuffed to Billy. My other hand is handcuffed to Jerry. They blindfold us because at this point in time, the Islamic Republic of Iran finds the bodies of the eight individuals that burnt in the desert. They realize that the Americans are attempting a rescue operation. They think that they're still coming in to rescue us. So all the hostages were in the chancery. By that evening of April 25th, they took all of us and they took Billy, Jerry, and myself. put us into a vehicle, blindfolded, handcuffed, took a picture of us from the passenger side. And, Laura, as you were sitting there talking about describing this, many of your viewers have gone through difficult times in their life. You don't forget it. And
Mm-hmm.
each day for 444 days was a traumatic time. You just didn't forget it. That night, they took a picture of us. They um, then put a blanket over top of us. That was the evening of April 25th. That blanket was not taken off of us until the afternoon of April 26th. And there was no stopping at a restroom, at a convenience store, at a restaurant, a rest area. It was, if you had to go to the restroom, you had to do it on yourself. Being held hostage was not a good place. And it's one of those things. We got to our next location the next day, and I can remember, uh, and you can sleep when you really get tired. And I can remember waking up that day of April 26th of 1980, and I remember hearing birds chirping. And I'm thinking, heaven can't smell like this because, the stench was so incredibly bad. And all of a sudden, they took the blindfold off of, or took the blanket off of us, and your blindfold was so wet that you could see images. The unhandcuffed Jerry from the left, unhandcuffed Billy from the right, and they pull us out of the vehicle, dragging us all through a building, and they put us into a room, unhandcuff us, and blindfold us and tell us to get cleaned up. And so that was that first night of our first stop before they moved us to another location.
My heart is racing as you're again going through your story, and I just have to pause and say thank you. Sincerely, thank you. No one should have to go through what you went through and what Jerry and Billy went through and all the other hostages. You're talking about that first rescue mission that ended in the loss of 8 brave Americans. And I know you think about them every single morning.
I do. Every morning I wake up, Laura, I earn each day a memory of those individuals that sacrificed their life for my life. Those 8 would never be able to go fishing with their son as I have. Those 8 individuals would never be able to walk their daughters down the aisle as I have. Those 8 individuals would never be able to hold their grandkids as I have. And so I work for a wonderful organization, Folds of Honor,
Mm-hmm.
that provides scholarships to children and spouses of fallen and disabled military and first responders. And so for me, that's my driving force. It's a therapeutic piece for me to help continue to tell the story of those 8. And at Folds of Honor, there's 73,000 stories. Just like my story, there's 73,000 other stories of people that have gone through much more difficult time. And you talk about me being a hero. I'm not a hero, Laura. The hero were those 8 individuals that perished. And so, this July 4th, I will be celebrating and saluting those 8 individuals, in addition to all those others that attempted that rescue operation.
And we appreciate your service every single day. Before we wrap up this part of the conversation, I do want to jump forward to January 20th, 1981. What do you remember about that day?
Yeah, that was a day. They had moved this, as I mentioned, that day of April 26th. We got to one location. They moved us to another location. And not only were we held hostage, Laura, we were also in a country that was at war with a neighboring country. That's when the war with Iran and Iraq started in 1980. They then brought us back, put us into prison. And like I said, we had spent our second Thanksgiving, our second Christmas, and our second New Year's Eve, and it is January 20th. We're in a room, locked in a room, and again, they had taken our shoes from us in 1980, and here we were basically sitting there one night, and all of a sudden they come in and said it's time to go. And they always told us this whenever we would be moved. And so, sure enough, they came in and they blindfolded us. They take us from the room that we were in. Instead of turning right the way that we came in, we turned left. The guard took me down. I was the first one. Jerry had his arm on my shoulder. Billy had his arm on Jerry's shoulder. And all of a sudden he stops me, turns me right, and he opens the door. And it felt this cold, fresh air, something I hadn't felt for over 2 years. I walk out and it was snow. And it was snowing at that time. And so I remember walking through the snow and it was crunching and the snow was falling from the sky. And I remember opening my mouth and allowing the snow to fall in. And we then are put onto a vehicle and the vehicle then starts up. It scrapes the right side of a tree, jumps a curb, turns right, and it drives until all of a sudden it made a right-hand turn. And you heard the sound of a jet engine. And this is something that you had prayed for, you would hope for a second chance in life. And all of a sudden, the vehicle stops right behind the plane that we were, the plane right behind the vehicle that we were in. And the force is pushing against the vehicle. And all of a sudden, they tell us to unblindfold. And again, you start to unblindfold very slowly. And here you're seeing people that you hadn't seen since November 4th of 1979. And it's now January 20th of 1981 and you're like in shock. You look bad, you smell bad, and all of a sudden they start plucking us one from one by one, and then all of a sudden they take me and put me at the back of the airplane, and at that time I walk up the back of the tail of the airplane, and I hadn't seen a woman in 444 days, and here's this beautiful little girl. And it was Algeria. Algeria were our mediators. We had no idea, Laura, that these individuals had sat on this airplane for 3 days waiting for us. We were supposed to have been released on January 17th, 1981, but the Islamic Republic of Iran waited until January 20th. And the reason why I'm here, Laura, is the United States paid the Islamic Republic of Iran $8.3 billion. And you're right, the reason that we're fighting this war, it all started November 4th, 1979, when the Islamic Republic of Iran took us hostage. And ever since then, they've had the foot on the accelerator just to humiliate us and torture us throughout the world. But that night, we had no idea what was going on. The pilot then comes on and says, "Please be seated. We must leave very quickly." And you're looking around the airplane, Laura, and you're wondering, hey, where's Gene? Where's Judy? Where's Debbie? Where's Kurt? There's other people missing. And they said, no, you're the last. The others were let go a whole year earlier. We had no idea that other people had been let go and that we were the remaining 52 of the hostages. And so you could not, nor did you want to leave anybody behind. And so the pilot gets to the end of the runway, gets ready to take off. He's got his foot on the brake, and all of a sudden the plane comes back down to an idle. And I can tell you through all the mock firing squads, the Russian roulette, you're sitting there thinking they're messing with us one last time. Little did we realize that back home was the inauguration. The Islamic Republic of Iran wanted to humiliate President Carter one last time, and that waited 20 minutes until he was out of office. President Reagan was in. They then turned the runway lights off so that President Reagan would get the credit for us to be released. And so, but again, Laura, this is not a story about Democrats or Republicans. It's a story about a government, the Islamic Republic of Iran, that hates our government. What they did to President Reagan in 1983 was kill 240 Marines in Beirut, the Beirut bombing. And so it's gone on and on and on. And that's my wife hates when I tell people this. I regret not pulling that trigger that morning of November 4th, 1979, because that would have been the day that the war on terrorism started. And to me, they would have gotten a small satisfaction for me for what they did to us. But obviously we didn't. And so here we sit 47 years later.
And who knows what the world would look like if at 22 years old you didn't have the restraint, the patience, the mental strength that you did, and you did pull that trigger. Who knows what the world would look like? Who knows if you would be on this planet and your family would be here? A true American hero. I am just in awe of Rocky's memory of all of this, of his storytelling, of the fact that he continues to share this story and the parallels that we are seeing today. And that's where I'm going to pick up this next part of the conversation when we come back with Rocky Sickman on Live with Laura. I have a big smile on my face as I am talking in real time with Rocky Sickman because I'm so happy that he has been able to live a life. If you are just joining us, I encourage you to go back and listen to this episode from start to finish as he's been recounting his 444 days in captivity in Iran. On January 20th, of course, Inauguration Day, 1981, is also your Freedom Day, the day you left that country, you're coming back home to America. What's the first phone call you made, Rocky?
Yeah, got to Wiesbaden, Germany, and to a hospital there. And on the bed was a letter addressed to me from my parents. It was dated January 15th, 1980. We weren't released until 1981. So that letter sat on that bed for a year. All right. And they said, hey, if you want to make a phone call, go down the corridor here, and there are phone booths. And so go down there, jump into my phone booth, and I pick it up, and all of a sudden I heard somebody say, yes, Mr. Sickman, you need me to make a phone call. And I said, well, yeah, how did you know I was Mr. Sickman? She goes, Mr. Sickman's phone booth. You must be Mr. Sickman. I'm thinking, yeah. And she goes, well, let me make this call. I've been waiting for a year to make this call. And so sure enough, I call home, and my dad would always tease my friends. We lived in a small town, like I said, Krakow, Missouri. It was a party line. And my friends would call, and my dad would pick it up and say, yeah, Krakow store. And my friends would hang up thinking they got the wrong store or phone number. And so when my dad answered, I said, yeah, is this Krakow store? And he goes, no, this isn't a Krakow store. I said, how you doing, Dad? And so it was a great call. And spoke to my mom, and my dad comes back on. He goes, Rocky, Jill's here. I said, she waited. He goes, well, she wants to talk to you. I'm thinking, well, shit, that doesn't sound good. Is she going to get married or what? What's going on? So she starts talking to me, and she said, Rocky, you have to make a decision, either me or the military. But I waited for you for 444 days. So it wasn't the Marine Corps that she hated. It was just the travel of not knowing. And so I made the right decision. And I got out in March of 1980 and went to work for KMOX, worked for Robert Hyland. And then I started with Anheuser-Busch in 1982. And I retired in 2016, and that's when I met with 2007. I met Major Rooney at the time, and so that was when he started to form Folds of Honor. I retired in 2016. He asked me to come on board, and so that's where I am to this day, and enjoying a wonderful career with Anheuser-Busch Folds of Honor, and my beautiful wife that waited for me for 444 days. She she's the person that knew me before and after Laura.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've had three beautiful children. We have five grandkids, one on the way, two wonderful son-in-laws, a beautiful daughter-in-law. And so, and I think back to those eight people, Laura, that those eight individuals would not be able to enjoy what I've been able to enjoy. And so that's why this story has to be told. And Americans must see how beautiful our country is, because until freedom is taken from you, do you really understand how wonderful it is? And so it was stripped, and I've got it back, and I'm
And
enjoying it.
Rocky, I'm just so amazed at how full of love you've spoken about every single thing, because in today's world, you know as well as I do, people get really upset over the silliest things if they don't go our way. We get mad, maybe we give a one finger salute if someone cuts us off in traffic. Oh, we're frustrated about this. Our child did this. We live in such a hot-headed society. And the fact that you who went through hell and back have so much love and respect for everything, I am just so humbled and want to think about living life like you do. You could be mad at everyone.
There's, yeah, it's interesting, Laura, that when you said that, there's a number 444. I could be driving down a road, having a bad day, and all of a sudden I pull up to a stop sign and look at the license plate in front of me. It's 444 AGW. And it's that number that God reminds me how wonderful it is to be here now, as opposed to being held hostage for 444 days. And it puts it back in perspective. The bad times really aren't bad. And so during COVID, I mean, I can remember people being so upset about being locked in their house, or, it's like, you know what? Every morning I take a shower. You know why? I can. I wasn't able to take a shower for the first, 2 months. And then after that, it was time a bird bath. So the wonderful things that we enjoy, but we forget how wonderful they are until they are stripped from you. And then you really realize. And so I always joke with my kids when they were younger. We had an old Dodge Caravan and had, three kids in the back, and person in the middle always hated to be in the middle. And I said, well, you'd be a bad hostage, because I was the guy that was locked, strapped in that back seat of that truck for over, 24 hours. And you sat there. So it's, I joke about it, but it's my reminder to everybody. And I think my family, they said, all right, Dad, don't say it, because they know what to say. But it is a joy to be back, and it's a blessing for me to have my wonderful family. And I dreamt of this, and I'd hoped for it. But like I said, to be able to see that American flag when I came home, it was so wonderful. And to be able to now enjoy this July 4th with my family, it's a blessing and a joy.
And I hope we all remember that as we celebrate this very special 250th of America. In real time, Rocky, Iran has dominated the headlines definitely for the last year. For people who know Iran so much better, like yourself, it's never left the headlines. But when you hear an update of what is happening in Iran, what comes to your mind?
It's a trigger, Laura. I mean, whenever you hear the word Iran, it right away brings back. And I can tell you that in our interrogations, they told us your government comes and goes every 4 to 8 years. We just need to negotiate through each one of them. And this has been going on for 47 years, Laura. They humiliated President Carter. They then humiliated President Reagan. Every president they have stabbed in the back. And so now we have an administration that is willing and wanting, and hopefully they're going to, hold fast, because the Islamic Republic of Iran, the government is not good. The people of Iran, they want peace and they want freedom. And I heard a number, out of the 90 million Iranians, 60% of them are of the age of 39 years or younger, and they really want peace and freedom, just like what we enjoy. And so I hope that we finish the job, because to me, the Islamic Republic of Iran has never been held accountable. And so now they're being monitored and they're being watched. And so it's for this administration, they've got a task, and hopefully it's going to be executed.
And it speaks volumes of you that you separate the Iranian people from the
Yeah.
Iranian regime, too. I think sometimes
Yes.
in casual conversation, people forget that there is a big separation there.
incredible. And, it's a beautiful country, incredible history. And I know many Iranians that live here in the United States that fled from the past 47 years, that part of the country and that their country, because the regime is not good. So people criticize ours. Yeah, we're not perfect, but I can tell you it's nothing like the Middle East, especially in Iraq. If you don't dress right, if you don't say the right things, they take your life. So we should be definitely very thankful for what we have.
And we are so thankful that they did not take your life and that you survived those 444 days so you could come back here to Missouri so you can make that choice. Jill or the military, you chose Jill, 3 kids, 5 grandkids, and 1 on the way later. What a beautiful life that you have built, and your kids and grandkids and great grandkids will continue telling your story. And as we do wrap up this conversation, come Saturday on the 4th of July, what do you hope every American thinks about that day?
That freedom is not free, and that where we're at, many people have lost their life um, trying to hold on to what that American dream is all about and what that flag represents, and it's freedom. And to me, it's those 8 individuals. I mean, it's every morning I wake up, it's thinking of them, so that they would allow me to have a chance to be free. And it's where we've been and where we continue to go. I try to continue to educate my grandkids on how wonderful our country is, and to be respectful of the flag. To stand there with your hand on the heart when it's national anthem. Uh, there are people, as we all know, millions of people that want to come to our country. Why is that? Because it's the best place to ever be. So we must be thankful.
I'm going to be thinking about those 8 individuals and you on Saturday. Rocky, thank you so much for telling your story. And friends at home, now we're turning it to you. We encourage you to continue telling Rocky's story. Share this episode, listen to it again, where you hear what Rocky has been through and now the beautiful life that freedom has now given to him, because he got his freedom back thanks to the grace of God and also the amazing work of the Americans and that pact with the Algerians to bring you back home. Rocky, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Laura. I appreciate it.
And friends at home, thank you too. We hope you have a wonderful 4th of July, full of celebrations, full of love, and full of freedom. Until next time, thank you
God,
for
America.
listening, thank you for learning, and thank you for being live with Laura.